The audio gods have shined down on us.
Yay.
Wonder what they look like, audio gods.
Oh, they're beautiful.
Better compliment them.
They're light, and they have done the trick, and we give them thanks.
That's
We
right.
do give them thanks.
All right.
It's challenging when your livelihood is based on technology,
Right.
and then when it doesn't work well, like emails, like half the time I'm like, do people actually get my emails? Because half
Yeah.
the time they don't respond at all, and I'm like, did they get it?
I know.
You
It's hard to
so
know.
It's hard to know.
It is
All right.
hard to know.
All right, here we go. Transition. There we are. I guess it just stopped. We'll figure that part. We'll figure that part out later. Yeah,
We
yeah.
do our best with what we have.
That's right. All right.
Exactly.
Well, we have an awesome show, so I'm really excited, Michelle, that you came in from Texas, and you were telling us before the show that you recently moved there.
I did.
So I'm really excited. Thanks for joining us.
Thank you for having me. It's so fun, and it feels like old home week from our reunion from a few years ago, and just it was so much fun and so it's really nice to be here again.
2015
Was that 2015?
was the last time Michelle was in our little studio
Wow.
across the way.
I had just finished like the work of my doctorate, but I hadn't even like graduated officially yet.
Really?
So yes.
Has 4 years flown by, or does it seem like so much has transpired
there has
that
been
it?
so much that has transpired in that time that it's like we have a saying that says you keep going so you can keep growing.
Yeah.
And it's like one thing after another. Sometimes it's like, okay, I'm good. I think I'm good now. Let's take a little bit of a break. And
Yeah.
oh gosh, so it's been a lot.
That's cool. So you are like the sort of guru of recall healing, because my sort of teacher or the guy I learned this from, Dr. Richard Massey, he goes to you for your classes and everything that you're doing.
He does, and I love Dr. Richard Massey. He's so great, and he's the one who got us connected too. And
Oh, is that right?
That's right. And so
Oh.
so I definitely am grateful for that connection, and so yes, I get to be the director of Recall Healing USA.
That's awesome.
And I'm the assistant director for Recall Healing International.
Mm-hmm.
And
Wow.
so it's quite an accomplishment, really. I'm super blessed to be able to do this work and get to meet the people that I meet, and it's been just so many, like one thing after another, blessing,
cool.
blessing. And it's wonderful.
Oh, go ahead.
How come now? Why do you think recall healing is? It seems like it's gaining some popularity and traction. But I mean, when Dr. Renaud, when did it originate, and why do you think now it's become more elevated and it's
More popular, right?
more popular, and then people are seeking it out more because I think that they're learning that, the supplements alone or the chiropractic alone or the whatever people are, there's a whole missing piece with the emotional component of it. But
Yeah, for sure. And I think that maybe what has happened, that whole collective unconscious, and that's like the brain to brain, and you're thinking something. It's like when somebody, you're thinking of your friend and they call you.
right.
So it's
Right.
that energetic connection that we all have, and that is sort of tapping into that, and it's like the pendulum is now swung back to old. And for so many years we said that there was a split between mind and body, and now we understand there's really no split, and we're understanding how really the limbic system works and the amygdala, that it's all working together. And so I think that people are definitely opening up to the possibility, which we understand as, no, this is the root.
Right.
And if you don't, deal with the emotions that originated the cancers or the serious illness, then you'll have a recurrence, or you won't be able to fully, eliminate it.
It's interesting because in our academy, a lot of people will say, they'll come in and they'll ask what supplements or what protocols to do, and everyone's sort of focused on the physical, and which I think the top, at least from the work that we've done on our show, for me, it seems like the top of the pyramid on a physical level for me are things like photons and electrons and light, water, magnetism, all of those ethereal forces that sort of dance between the physical and spiritual. But then those guys who focus mostly on biohacking and light water magnetism and electrons and protons, those guys don't talk at all about what I think is even deeper, and that's the root cause, and that is spiritual healing, emotional conflicts, traumas, family issues, things like that. And I just think it's interesting because for those people, I'm trying to bring your work to them. And then to the people who think food is everything, I'm trying to make them understand that it's a lot about light, water, magnetism. And then so certain pockets just don't see the other sides.
It's so crazy. And, my personal thought about that is that happens because it's the hard work. Mm-hmm. It's sort of easier to change your diet and to add light or do some different therapies.
Take a pill,
like,
that's
because
the
people
easiest.
are really looking for that magic bullet still.
Right.
And there is no magic bullet.
Right.
You have to do the hard work. And, just on my own personal journey, that it is very painful to walk through some of the things that we have to walk through, or that we're given a choice. Yes, I'm going to do this hard work, or no, I'm not. And then if I choose not to do it, what are the consequences for that?
Right.
Because so often people are stuck in their marriages, they're stuck in their jobs, but because they're afraid of leaving or afraid of not getting the financial support or whatever they need, they stay in these really terrible situations. Well, that's when the brain will say, oh, this is too much for you to handle. So that's what starts that disease process.
So living the kind of lifestyle we are living is that's what the disease is, right? And then we get something that shows up as a marker on a blood test, or a high level this, low level that. Oh no, you've got this, that, or the other. But the actual disease, right, is the way that we're living, and there's some conflict there, right?
Yeah, and we have a saying that it's the stress of the daily life.
Right.
And so your little stresses, it's like, the way I tell people is envision a little pebble in your shoe. Mm-hmm. And at first, it's not that big a deal. But if that pebble stays there for long enough, you're going to get a blister. You're going to have a lot of irritation. It's going to be harder to walk, And blisters in the military are a huge deal, And so we have to consider these kinds of things, that what is the pebble in our shoe? What is our secret suffering? That is such a powerful question to ask people. What is it that you're not at peace about?
Yeah, that's like you said, that's the work, right? I mean, because it's interesting where you have a lot of people can take a supplement or a pill or even change their diet, right? And change sort of these markers in our blood to look like a certain way. But in reality, there's some invisible process that's going on that's causing that. And so even though you can sort of forcibly manipulate a number to look different, you're not really changing the process behind why that number was indifferent to begin with, right?
Exactly, and that's why it doesn't have lasting results. Right? And that how many times do you hear people, once they get diagnosed with a serious illness or cancer or something like this, then all of their attention goes towards the cancer, this, and then it almost becomes their second identity,
and they own it.
I was like, oh, my cancer, and well, why did you get the cancer in the first place? Let's focus on that, because when you focus on that, then the body can begin to understand, oh, she gets it. He understands why this came, and now maybe they don't need this manifestation for the rest of their life, you know? So, or they don't have to die for this, because that's the other question that we can ask. This secret suffering that we have, do you want to die for that? Who's that person that is so irritating or so hurtful or so angry in your life that's causing so much inner turmoil? Do you want to die for that? And that, it's a really powerful question, because most
that
people will
shows how
say
much
no.
attachment they have to it, right?
Right, but people will say, no, I don't want to die for it. Well, what are you willing to do to make your life different? Because it's what we do with what we know.
So I wonder, it would be interesting to go through a scenario. Would you be comfortable doing that, with something like a cancer or a heart disease or something, and try to figure out what the actual conflict is? Because I know Dr. Renaud has some examples that are really, really powerful about that. And I'm wondering if you might be able to shed some light on that, because as if someone's new and listening to this or watching this, they're gonna think like, what are you talking about? Like, I thought I could just do this, that, or the other.
Yeah,
and
it's
heal my
so
cancer.
crazy, right? Because people think like, okay, and they want to know very specifically, what supplement should I take? What therapies should I do?
Right.
If the person only worked on their emotional conflicts, then everything else that they do really adds to that.
Okay.
So it sort of clears the path and allows for healing to happen. And so, yes, I'm happy to talk about anything, you know. So
let's talk like what's more apropos or what's easier to explain so people could understand, like a heart attack or a.
So a heart attack, so we could totally take a heart attack, okay? And so there's two phases of every disease and every illness, okay? And we say that this work came from Dr. Hammer's work, and this is the science. And so we stay with the science because it is all about the biology. What happens in nature is what happens with us too. And so that's why a lot of times psychology doesn't work the way that we intend it to, because we're stuck in our prefrontal cortex. We're in our heads. We need to connect our head to our heart. We need to make that journey. And the Dalai Lama says that's the longest journey. So let's say a person is in conflict over their territory. Oh, my wife, she's over here, and I think she might be cheating on me. And, you know, I have this family, and I want to be with her. I love her, but she's over here. She's doing something else. And then, you know, so it's the stress. So the brain says, oh, you're losing your territory. You're losing your territory. So first, it would download into the brain on, let's say, the coronary heart relay, okay, because it downloads, our brain is our computer system. And so it downloads first into our brain and then simultaneously onto the body part according to the felt experience. So if something's going on in our nest, in our home, then it can reach the breast. Okay, or for a woman, it could be the uterus. And every little thing has nuances of how we feel and what we're experiencing. And so the heart is who I love, my territory, the people that I love in my territory. So one stress, for one person, it could be heart attack, but for another person, it might be uterus. Okay, and so that's why, that's like when you go in a car and there's a car accident and one person walks away scot-free, nothing happens to them at all, and then another person is all banged up, and they'll say, oh yeah, it's because of where I was sitting in the car.
Right.
No, it's based on the conflicts.
Whoa.
It's always based on the conflicts. And so if that person broke their arm, I was feeling devalued about some bones are about devaluation. Okay, and then the accident, the break comes in the repair phase. So you're at the end of this cycle, okay? Most of the time, you don't get sick. Like, you're not aware that you're sick, okay? But the disease process starts during the middle of the conflict. So
Would the conflict be, in this case, the car accident, or before that?
It's before that.
Okay.
And so for that individual, whatever they're experiencing in their life, just like with this guy who's like, oh, my wife, that's the middle of the conflict. You're not going to get a heart attack for that. And let's say that it lasts like 2-3 months. It's a conflict for a heart attack. It's a conflict longer than 2 or 3 months. So it's this big stress that I'm experiencing. Does
each condition have its own time frame? You said 2 to 3 months.
It does, and so it's tricky, you know, for all of that. And I don't even know all of the different, you know, times, because it is so intricate.
Because everything is so different. It could be autoimmune disease for someone. It could be heart attack for someone else.
Yeah, but also based on the conflict. And then and when you talk about autoimmune, then you're talking about an underlying conflict of not being wanted by the father in the beginning stages, like when that child was coming into the world, because the autoimmune, really, you disappear in your life.
Wow.
Right?
Wow.
And so as an invisible loyalty to my dad who didn't want me, I'm going to disappear in my life.
Whoa.
And I'll create a situation
and
in
which
which
the
I will.
autoimmune shows up. Okay, to actually take over, because, oh, I shouldn't be here, I shouldn't be here. This is the message that they carry. So then the autoimmune comes to help them to deal with that.
Okay. So let's get back to the heart attack a little bit. So if someone feels like their territory is being taken away from them,
Yeah.
then that's the conflict and that's the disease, right? That's the disease
So
process.
the disease starts in that process, okay? And then let's say that the wife is like, oh, you know what? I had this happen. Let's go on a workshop and let's rekindle our marriage and let's get back on track.
Okay.
And so then they go back and then he feels really connected with her and I'm so happy. Heart attack. Then.
At that point, how weird is that?
It seems so
Okay.
opposite of what would
Right?
happen. You think you'd have all this healing.
Exactly, and that's the thing. So the bigger the stress, the bigger the repair can be.
Oh, make sure to get as close as you can to the mic. Yeah, yeah.
So
and
the
you can
bigger,
take off your things.
Oh.
if
Oh,
you
yeah.
want.
If
I
you
would
want.
like to.
Yeah, I know. It kind of squeezes your head.
Yeah, I'm gonna try to take a commercial, so we'll see if we can do that. So in
Okay,
that case, we'll
okay,
put him back
okay.
on.
Okay.
But okay, so the bigger the stress, the bigger the actual.
The bigger the repair can be.
and the
okay?
repair
It-
is what happens at the time of the heart attack, right?
Exactly. The repair is what is going on in the physical. So flus, like a simple flu, a cold, a virus, these are all repair phases of little territorial conflicts. So like at Christmas time when everybody gets sick, okay, there's stress. Well, it's stress specific.
Whoa.
My family is coming. Oh, my mother-in-law is going to come.
It's
and
always
she's
the
gonna
family,
be
isn't
like,
it?
Expectations.
Oh, it's always the
It
family,
is always
right?
the family.
And so then your mother-in-law's in your cabinets and,
Right.
and then she goes home, cystitis, because you couldn't mark your territory with your mother in there.
Interesting.
Wow.
Okay, so very specific. So what happens in nature with animals being able to mark territory, they pee on it.
So the example that I heard was like the dog. I think Dr. Massey shared this. I'm not sure if this came from Dr. Renaud or Dr. Massey, but he was talking about in the event of a dog that has its own sort of territory on the farm, lives on the farm, has free reign, can eat all the food he wants, right? And then gets all the raw food he wants. And then
Gets all the ladies.
He gets all the lady dogs, whatever he wants.
How you do it?
I know, right?
And then so what happens is the owner in this theoretical, thing, like Schrodinger's cat, puts the dog into a cage and brings in a new dog. And then the new dog gets the free range of the farm, access to everything, all the raw food it wants. And so during that time, the original dog that had its own territory there is just eating away at the lining from the stress of being taken away, his territory being taken away. And then as soon as the dog or the guy opens up the gate for him to regain his territory,
Heart attack.
heart attack.
Exactly.
So-
or bladder cancer. Or, because it's also
Interesting.
territory too. So depending on how the dog will integrate that conflict, and that it's the way, it's so crazy, but that's the way that so if it's like, oh, I love my master so much and want to be with him, or I can't pee on that tree over there because that dog is over there peeing on my tree.
Right.
So it's dependent on that felt experience. That's the really big key.
That's so interesting.
I'm curious about that dog thing because all dogs, our dogs do it, and they're girls, but they're always peeing over each other. And
Oh yeah.
Oh,
is
yeah.
is that a healthier way because they're actually like, this is my territory and I feel like I'm doing something about it, when humans are more like, I'm not gonna let my mother-in-law, like I don't want to step on her toes, so I'll just shrink
Exact-
over here.
Wait, say that again, Kate. Like,
Well, I
what's
was
the-
curious because Michelle talked about, the dog marking their territory.
Right, and
It seems
eating.
like a healthier thing that animals do. They're like, this is my territory and I'm taking it because they're more primal. We're more like, oh, there's all these emotions involved. And the
Right.
example
And then
of
we
your
shut our
mother-in-law
mouth.
coming and we just, we don't say anything because we don't want to cause an upheaval or an upset.
The
So
biggest
bottling it
thing,
up?
Bottling
that-
up
and
seems like that would just start to
that's
settle in your organs. You know?
Exactly. That's exactly right. So the more that we don't, so we say we give it issues so it doesn't go in our tissues. So the soon as we don't give it issue and we're suffering and we're spinning our wheels and we're ruminating about it, and then we're in sympathetic overdrive. We can't eat, we can't sleep. We're just thinking about our problem. How am I going to resolve my problem? How am I going to resolve my problem? That's when the brain will say, the psyche will say, too much. We
too
need to
much.
recuperate some of this energy, so we're going to take it from the psyche and download it into the body according to your felt experience until you can resolve your problem later.
That's in order so that you can regain your energy.
Yeah,
And
so that
your-
because you can't operate at that degree of stress for very long, the body will help us. And it's a natural system that no one is above. So I have so many healers and doctors that will come, and they're like, I'm so mad. I've done everything right. I eat perfectly. I exercise.
These are the doctors saying
These
this
are
to you?
the doctors,
The
right?
healers.
And I'm so angry that I have a cancer. And I said, but you haven't worked on your emotional conflicts. You know, none of us are immune from this process.
Right.
If we don't work our conflicts,
Yeah.
if we don't talk about it, if we allow people to walk all over us, because that's what you're saying, because
Yeah.
this person is in my territory, you know, trying to pee on my territory, and I don't say anything, that's when it happens.
Yeah, I feel like we are daily just surrounded by years and decades of bottling and bottling and bottling. I think most people think they're above therapy or any kind of this kind of work because they're like, oh, no, I'm good. Like when we are coming here right now, for
We all
example.
bottle things up.
Well, and it was funny because I'm like, I'm going to be working with Michelle later this month, which I'm super excited about. But I mean,
too.
I've been on a journey, probably a really deep one for the last 15, 20 years. And I've done a lot of work, but I still feel like there's this missing component of going deeper with the healing. But it's funny because, you know, my folks have the kids right now. And we were leaving, and they said, now who's coming into the studio today? And I said, and usually I'd be
And
like,
they're very
oh,
closed off,
yeah,
or
they
they're
don't get
very
it.
like,
And
yeah.
I'd usually say, oh, just another health person, you know. But I said, actually, she's a friend of ours, you know, Dr. Michelle Schreier. And they said, what is she about? And I said, well, and I tried to explain you in like but in
It's
a way
really
that they would
hard, right?
understand. But I said, she helps people. She's a doctor. She helps people deal with their emotional upset so that it doesn't cause diseases in the body. And I said also that.
Did you say that?
And I said, so people with childhood, maybe traumas and things that haven't been dealt with, that are sick, it's this missing part of. And they're like, oh, huh. And it was like this, that sounds interesting, but not really, you know? And I was like,
there's nothing to that. That's going nowhere.
yeah, I think that, and
Anyway.
it's funny because my sister's a marriage and family therapist, so it's kind of funny. They see this end of like, we just, you know, kind of dig things up and just, it doesn't really get anybody real lasting healing. And I think that's the lie that people they're opposed to because they think they're kind of sometimes above it or they've done the work or they're afraid to go there or they just think it doesn't work. Because I think people think they're going to dig up all this stuff and be so upset about things and then there's no real release.
Right. It is so funny, too,
You know?
because people will say, oh, I already did that. I already
Right.
worked on that. But you feel their anger. Yeah. You can see like how angry they actually
If
are.
you're responding like that, it probably shows that there's still so much sitting there
Exactly.
because if you've already dealt with it, you might be like, oh, and you let that go a lot easier. But I'm sure it's like
But-
a defense that comes up. Like,
Exactly. So when the
Interesting.
emotion doesn't fit the experience, so like if something happens in your daily life and it's like you respond like, where did that come from? Like there's so much anger there. What is that about?
Yeah, something
Yeah.
small,
You
right?
know that then you're sort of on a date with destiny. That this is symbolic of what you haven't dealt with in your past and in your timeline and based on your age and all of those things do matter. And so once you start to make those connections and sort of look at these areas, then you realize, oh, this is an opportunity for me to grow. And let me clear these things away. And so, because so many people will tell me, oh, I don't remember, you know, but we use what's going on in the here and now. We use like what we see from our children, what they reflect back to us is the perfect thing for what we need to work on.
Okay.
So whatever your children are giving to you, you know, oh man, it's not your kids, it's you. If you do the work, your kids heal.
Why is my kid not taking a nap anymore? Like, what is this 14-month no nap thing? What is that?
Well, what was going on
I
when
know.
you were 14 months before you were pregnant with
Right.
them? And what
See,
was going on when, you know, when you were 14 years old?
Isn't
and
that
so
an
maybe that's
endless
like-
loop that you can keep going down though? And it seems like you can keep going down that loop forever and always find something and.
But that's the point, right? Because we can keep doing that. But if you're not triggered, then there's no reason to go down the hole. But if you are triggered, then you know, there's something here that we need to pay attention to, and let's go back and do our work. Let's see, where is this coming from? Because it's always about the iceberg. The tip of the iceberg is what you think is going on. It's
Okay.
what's going on in the here and now. But then underneath is our life experiences, okay? And that's all based on when we leave our home and become independent of our parents, including food, shelter, and clothing.
Right.
And then we drop a little bit deeper and we look at that time before we're born, the 18 months before we're born. that's 9 months before conception. So everything that mom and dad have experienced in their life, that goes into the genetic makeup of who we are, into the semen, into the ovum, and then mom and dad come together. Were they intending to conceive you? Was this, the plan, And
Right.
so this all matters for that child. And then what's the pregnancy like? What's it like when you find out that you're pregnant with that child? With my youngest son, my husband cried. And and we were doing natural family planning, and
Okay.
and so it's crazy what kids will pick up. So we're doing natural family planning. I didn't know like the little nuances. And so we conceived him on day 9. And the rule is never make love after day 7. Okay. If you don't want to conceive. And so Jeremy for years would walk around the house. My ex-husband was a carpenter. And so he had a tape measure, and he'd take the tape measure and he'd put it up there and he'd put it this way. And we'd say, how big is it, Jeremy? 2'9". And so not 29, 2'9". For years it was like that. And then he started school and he was off in the math by 2. And so I went on the workshop for children learning difficulties and behaviors and realized that these little stories matter. And so I'm telling my husband, and hey, oh my gosh, how we miscalculated. And
Right.
and so then Jeremy comes up, and he's a little guy at that point, like 5-6 years old at that
Okay,
point. And
yeah.
he's like, what's miscalculation, Mama? And I said, well, it's when this happens. Within 20 minutes, he has a raging fever. He's vomiting. Okay, as Gilbert and I are going to the workshop, and he said, yes, but tell me, Michelle, why, what is the misunderstanding? Because throwing up, vomiting is about misunderstanding. And so he's like, how did he take the information when you told him you were pregnant? And I said, oh, he cried. Because we had planned, that we weren't going to get pregnant for 6 or 9 months. And,
Okay, right.
And so here it was like, oh no, it wasn't his perfect timing. And
Right.
he was very structured this way. And so it was a big deal for him. Of course, it worked out fine. But what happened was when Jeremy had started school, he was off by 2, because it's giving back to mommy. Hey, don't worry. I'm going to be off by 2 to show you, Mom, that you're okay. Because I exist because of that happening.
Wow.
And so
That's
when you
really
release
interesting.
the child, they can be who they were meant to be. So after that happened, after he had his little sickness, he got 100% all the way through state testing. He's now majoring in finance and business in
my
school.
goodness. Wow.
He's like the kid that I always wanted to be, like calculus and all of these things I could never do. And I'm like, oh, thank you for this
Wow.
information. So the child becomes the biological solution. So whatever their behaviors, whatever is manifesting in their life, we have to think, why is that the best solution? Okay? I've had people, it's great. Like they're like, oh, my kid, they talk so much, they tell me off, they do all of this. And I said, well, what happened with your mom? Oh, she would tell me off and she would treat me so disrespectfully. So it's like you're standing in the middle of the room, and so on this side is mom.
Right.
And whatever you got from mom, that's all in your genetic makeup. And most of the time we haven't resolved that by the time we have children.
Right.
Okay, so then you give that to the child and they grow up and then they give you exactly the same thing. Okay,
Just different
and you're
personality.
different. Oh my gosh, I'm so loving, and I'm doing this for them, and I'm doing that for them. Well, they don't get that because you're doing it because of your own pain. Because of that, you heal this with mom, and then this heals with your children.
It's interesting. Yeah. So somehow we bring these into our next generation. That's why you and I were talking about the other day. Like, it makes sense if evolution is true. It makes sense that mankind would be here for billions and billions and billions of years. If the ultimate goal is spiritual growth and whatever personal growth and stuff, it would make sense, right? That we would be here for this long, because you might have 1 million years of a couple generations of people that just are in the dark about all this stuff. And so there goes 1 million years just like that.
Well, I was thinking about what you said, how you thought this could be exhausting because you go rabbit trail down rabbit trail down rabbit trail. But I'm thinking
Right.
the more we live, it's like you're like a yarn ball. the more you go on, the bigger it gets. So you're constantly having to unravel, because then you just get too big of a mess that you're no good for anything. But I have to think that you probably, when you do the hard work, you get to a point where your ball just gains less yarn as you go, because you have the proper tools to...
Right, because you're dealing
you're not
with
as
it
overwhelmed,
as you go
maybe.
along. You're dealing with that as you go along. So at first, a lot of times when I first work with people, they're like, oh, I don't want to work because I might go into repair phase. Well, but maybe you're saving yourself of a cancer later.
Yeah.
Right.
So let's welcome that repair phase, because now your body, you're getting the understanding that your body is transitioning. So the more that you do the work, the more that you work on the tools and you integrate them into your life, the less that it's huge. Okay, you might still have huge things that you're walking through, but it doesn't have to be a huge healing or a detoxing,
or a major crisis,
a major health crisis in your life. And so it's really, and we're all, like what you were saying earlier, is like, oh, we all sort of shut our mouth because we're trained. Don't air your dirty laundry. Don't tell people about the things. And so truly, we are as sick as our secrets are. So this secret suffering that we have. And so the more that we can teach our children that it's okay. Oh, honey, I see that you're disappointed. You know what? That makes sense. And then you're giving them the right to feel that way. So, but so many of us are like, oh, you don't have a right to be sad.
Yeah.
You have
Or
everything
it's okay,
in the
it's
world.
Okay. Yeah, don't cry.
It's okay. Like, be
But
a big
clearly
boy.
it's not,
be a
right?
big girl.
Yeah, clearly it's
Yeah.
not okay because they're
Right.
crying, right?
Or the right to say no, or the right to do anything, because it's like we all
Exactly.
I don't have any boundaries.
Right. Well, and that just
You're
I'm
telling
owning
me.
it. I'm like, hey,
hey, you're in good company, girl.
I know. I'm like how he's like, hallelujah.
Boundaries.
I do. We all need
Boundaries
more
are
boundaries.
everything.
They are. I feel like the more I have developed them slowly, I get healthier. But it's a
Right,
lot.
but nobody gives you a high five for
Right.
setting boundaries,
No.
and that's
Yeah.
that's
Right.
the hardest thing, because a prophet doesn't speak to his own land, and when you're in your family, they're not going to give you a high five because you're different.
Yeah, it's so true.
And you're doing things differently than you ever have before, and so they're like, "What is wrong with you?" And then it's all about that person. What's wrong with you? You're not doing this, and you're not being a good Christian woman, and so. But as far as I know, Jesus never wanted anybody to be walked all over, and he set boundaries all the time.
yeah.
And that is
He
so
did.
important.
How
Right.
important is it to, do you think, because you're talking about earlier before about, I forget what the exact thing you were talking about with your mother-in-law in your house and, you know, and not being able to speak your truth or whatever. You know, it's interesting because on one side of the equation, it's almost like you want to not have any attachment to your opinions or thinking that you are your opinions, you know? You want to make sure that, like, you can let things go easily, like she was talking about, Kate, not letting the ball of yarn continue to grow. But on the other hand, it's as if you don't express yourself, you know, that's a conflict that's going to get stored internally. But if you don't have any attachment to what your opinions are, if you're a Republican and you're, you know, talking to a Democrat and they make you look stupid for pointing something out that you should have known in front of a bunch of people, if you can just let that go, does that still download into your consciousness? If you're not even attached, you realize, like, I'm much more than a Republican or Democrat. So stuff like that doesn't affect you, because you want to have both, right? Like, you want to speak your
Right.
truth, but also not be attached to your opinion.
Yeah.
right?
So, but we're human beings, okay? And that being human, part of the human experience is to have our own territory and is to be in connection. We're relational beings, and so when conflict comes up in our relationships, it will come up. You know, people are like, "Oh, I don't like conflict." Well, really, it's I don't like communication. Because
Yeah.
I have to communicate something that might be hard for the other person to hear. We don't have to be, you know, jerks about it.
Right.
But we sometimes, and especially if it bothers us. So it's really great to try to take a step back and not take it personally.
Okay.
Okay.
Like the Don Miguel Ruiz
Exactly.
kind of thing.
Like those, you know, don't have assumptions, always do your best. You know,
So
these
you-
are super powerful.
So you want to make sure you're doing that, right?
Right. And so
Okay.
you're stepping back and you're saying, like, okay, this person responded to me like that. It's not about me, it's about them. But why is it triggering me? Let me see why this is triggering me. Oh, this reminds me of when I was this, or I had a teacher that did this, or I had a boss that did that. And then you go back and you do this kind of work and you sort of clear it away. So then when this person shows up again, no problem.
So what kind of work is that you're?
So we talk about the letting go exercises, and so we use EFT, the emotional freedom technique, and we do like a little shortcut of the butterfly hug, and we'll just, so the right side is, you know, the giving side for a right-handed person, because it does matter, laterality.
Okay.
So, and then, but it's the way I judge myself, and then the left side is the feminine, the mom, the receptive side, and it's also the way we feel judged by other people. And so when we tap, we anchor what we say into our body. And so I might say, oh, even though my mom made me so angry, I love and accept myself. And I forgive myself from the bottom of my heart because I was doing the best I could with the resources that I have. And I forgive mom because she's doing the best she can with the resources that she has. I don't have to carry this in my breast or in my body. I choose to let this go so that I can live my life to the fullest. And I say a deep cleansing breath.
So that should be done daily.
Oh, yeah.
I
Like
mean,
sometimes 100 times a day, right?
Right.
And then Ho'oponopono, which is so powerful. It's really, I think the one practice that has really significantly changed my life.
So share a little bit about that for people that don't know what that is.
So it comes from indigenous Hawaii, and Dr. Len was the one that made it popular in our era, you know, but he had indigenous Hawaiian ancestors. And have you ever been to Maui?
I've been to Maui as a kid, yeah.
Okay, so on Maui is the road to Hana, and so it's like
right.
all these this little windy road, and there's all these little villages. And so for hundreds of years, this is the way that they would resolve their conflict. They were a monotheistic people, and then they would say, oh, there's a conflict going on in our community. Let's gather everyone. So the people that have the conflict, and then they would surround them, and they would all take 100% responsibility for why this conflict was showing up.
Interesting.
And they would say, and we can say, I'm so sorry for whatever's in me that might contribute to this guy being such a jerk, or, you know, whatever it might be. Let me take responsibility for that. I'm sorry. Please forgive me. I love you. Thank you. And they healed that way, and they lived peacefully for hundreds of years. So Dr. Len would do this with his clients, and he had this great success rate. And so they invited him to come and work with the people in this one mental institution they had a really huge turnover rate because they were attacking the nurses and doctors. So he said, okay, sure, I'll do that. So, but I'll never see them personally. And so he saw their folder, what had been done to them in their history, what they had done to other people. And he knew that all of us, when we're in survivor mode, we can behave in less than desirable ways. And so he just said, oh, I'm so sorry for whatever's in me that would cause him to rape or to murder or to, you know, to whatever it is. Please forgive me. I love you. Thank you. And one by one, they started to heal. He never saw them. It took around 4 or 5 years, but every single person in that ward was actually released, and where they had no promise of ever being released.
Wow.
And
so it's powerful.
It's super powerful. So many stories of healing and transformation. In fact, I shared with you guys a story about when I was a little girl, and so there's a follow-up story to that. So I was a little girl. I was in 5th grade. I went to a new school, and I ended up getting in a fist fight over a boy. Okay,
it's always about a boy.
Okay, and I was 10. Okay, so the 10 years old is like as if you're starting life all over again. And so my mom and dad they weren't married. I was conceived in a car, like in very undesirable ways, you know, but
right.
So I exist from that, right? My mom's name is Sandy, and so my father's last name is Carmona. So this girl's name was Sandy. And so we end up getting in a fight over a fist fight. Well, when my life started, both of my parents were cheating on each other because my father was not very nice to my mother. My father's best friend befriended my mom, and they fell in love, and that's been my dad for 50 years.
Interesting.
So,
wow.
So they changed that. So I was like, oh my gosh, understanding this, her last name, this girl that I had a fight with, her last name had car in it. And so I'm like, oh my gosh. So
Wow.
when my son was in 5th grade, he comes home and his best friend Carson, and he ends up like, oh, Mom, Carson's not being very nice to me. And they're 10 years old, and Carson's parents just went through a divorce. And so now for 4 years, they were best friends. And now the energy changed in Carson. And so he doesn't resonate with Jeremy anymore because
Wow.
his parents are still together. And so I thought, oh my gosh, is this related to me with Sandy? So I just said, literally, I said, I'm so sorry for whatever's in me that's making that guy be a punk to my kid. Please forgive me. Because you have to get in touch with the emotional connection with it. And because that's what it is. So prayer is like, I can pray for you or you can pray for me, but we're not connecting ourselves. The Ho'oponopono is that you're really getting in touch with that anger or hurt or resentment
With that
or
shared emotion.
whatever that is, and
Okay.
you're taking ownership, like, oh, I'm so sorry that this is showing up, you
Right.
know.
Wow.
And so then you do it and you clear it. And so I did that, and I didn't think anything of it. 2 weeks later, and this is a woman that I went to school with from 5th grade to 12th grade. We were on the same teams. We played, and Sister Elizabeth called us in and said, you guys have to apologize to each other. And it was like the thing, right?
my
But we
gosh.
never liked each other. And so I said, oh, you know, like, we're just wounded little girls. Let me do it for her too. So I did it for her. 2 weeks later, I get a Facebook message from her that says, hey, Michelle, I've been wanting to write you for a really long time, but I wanted you to know how sorry I am for the way I treated you when we were little girls.
No.
That
I
was
hope
from
you
10?
forgive me. I hadn't seen her in 25 years.
And when you fought when you were 10?
And we fought from when we were 10, but she was like, you know, the mean girl, you know, like
Yeah.
that. And
Yeah.
so never liked her. She was always sort of snarky with me.
Wow.
She grows up, becomes a 5th grade teacher.
A recall healing expert.
No, that's me.
5th
not
grade
her.
teacher, though. You're about 10,
So,
aren't you? Or
right.
9?
So she
11?
becomes a teacher of 5th grade students. And it's so crazy. And then
Wow.
after I got my doctorate,
That's crazy, isn't
she
it?
reached out to me because her daughter had a rheumatoid arthritis, and this is about feeling devalued. So for me, it was like, oh, Sandy carried so much of the devaluation that now her daughter carries this as well.
That's so
And
interesting.
so I got to work with her daughter. And I
Wow.
was just
Wow.
like, wow, that is so beautiful. And then, like, even a couple years after that, I said my son was having an issue with somebody else, and I was like, gosh, you know, this guy Dino is like Sandy was for me. And then my mom and I were out to lunch, and I said, Mom, did you ever have a Sandy in your life? And then she looked at me and she's like, you know what? I totally had a Sandy in my life. And it was like, she said, I was in 5th grade. And I was on the playground, and I was waiting for the bars, and then Sandy came over, and then she scratched my face. Do you see this? This is from her. And it was like my mom was 10 years old again. I was sort of, I was
So
like, Mom,
crazy.
we have work to do. So we did Ho'oponoponos for her Sandy, for this Dino boy. And
Wow.
then Dino started treating Jeremy better and with more respect. And it's so
Wow.
crazy how it works like that.
Oh my goodness. Kate, do you have to go?
I'm sorry.
Oh my gosh, it was so great.
I have to go get the twins, but I love you both. Can't
I
wait to
love
work
you.
with you. Keep the conversation going, and I can't wait to hear this one. So
Oh, it's
Yeah.
so fun.
this is too
Thank
fun.
you.
I'm sorry, I
And
have to go.
I'll
Love
vox you
everybody.
when
Okay.
we're done.
Okay.
Yeah.
I'll see you.
Okay.
Okay.
That is just a crazy story. I mean, it's funny. It's so interesting how this stuff sort of bleeds into energetic fields of everybody, and
Yes.
we all sort of carry it. I feel like it's like this sort of morphic field that, you know, Sheldrake talks about, where we're all just sort of taking stuff, and we kind of just have it for a while, and we have these conflicts that we have to deal with. It seems like you could do Ho'opono. How do you say it?
Ho'oponopono. I don't know if I'm
Ho'oponopono.
actually like, and there's all these great meditations, and they say it so beautifully. I might be massacring it, but
But that seems to me like the most practical one that you could do.
and
you know,
and
so
really,
simple.
you know, it is super simple. And then sometimes, like recently, I had something where I was really hurt and really angry over something,
Mm-hmm.
and I tried to do a Ho'oponopono, and I couldn't do it, and it was
Because
like
you
that.
couldn't tap into the.
I
you
was
couldn't
so
disassociate.
hurt and I was so angry that I didn't even want to do it for that person. And so I had to really process and really work through some of my own stuff to get to the place where I could do one for her. And then I did several. I've been doing them regularly because I know that when we offer love and gratitude and forgiveness, and that is what has the ability to clear the path. When we're angry and we offer anger and resentment, then that's what's going to grow, and that's what's going to stay there, and that's what's going to block us.
Right.
And so it's a way to sort of, it literally means to make right. So you're literally cleansing these, whatever we carry. And I tell people, it's not you. You're not responsible like you caused this, but you're responsible because you carry it. Your ancestors, this happened in your ancestry, and it's coming out for you, and you get to clear it. You get to be the one that makes the difference.
Yeah, it's so interesting, isn't it? Because at some point you could just say, well, there's so many, and imagine all the different emotions and traumas and crazy events that would have happened in our ancestors, hundreds, literally thousands. There's got to be people that have committed murder. There's got to be people that have raped, stolen, killed people. And all of that is within all of our lines.
Right.
Right? It has to be.
Yeah. And what's crazy about that is that, let's say there's a big injustice that happens from the people, from our ancestors, right?
Okay.
So then maybe in the next generation, it produces a police officer or a judge or a lawyer to cleanse the injustices that have happened. Or there's been a death from above, and then that creates a doctor in the next generation. Okay, so it's like this secret suffering that has happened from above will manifest in the best way to create a solution to heal these things.
So that would make a lot of sense, it seems to me. Why? Because people will say all the time, at least in the Christian circles, they'll say the only real explanation for children getting leukemia or something like that is, well, it's God's will, and that's basically that's the only sort of explanation. And then on a physical sort of natural level, they'll say, well, it could be EMFs from dirty electricity in the walls. It could be, toxic exposures to whatever. But this seems to make sense, the most sense from a spiritual perspective, I think, rather than just saying, oh, well, it's God's will.
Right. Because I'm like, really? Because God, for me, God would really make anyone suffer like that.
Especially when they're
when they're babies and they have no idea. And Dr. Hammer said that if a baby would get a leukemia, that it was the baby's conflict. Where Dr. Sabah, who took German New Medicine and then sort of added to it in total biology, he says, no, there's more to it. Then we bring in this timeline. We bring in the project purpose of what was going on. So let's say that in the project purpose of this baby, mom and dad had something really serious happen where they couldn't defend the family. They couldn't protect somebody, and somebody got killed or hurt, or they went to war and they couldn't, and they got killed. Okay. So then this baby comes, and then is the solution to that, because the parent's secret suffering becomes the child. It is in the baby. And then later on, when the problem is resolved, leukemia. But leukemia happens because I wasn't able to protect my family.
That's interesting.
Okay. But it when we have children, it downloads to our children because we still have to work. We still have to do what we have to do.
Go about our business.
So it's like the way that biology works in order to help us. And when we pay attention, then the child heals, we heal, and so does the ancestors.
So I'm just trying to make sense of this. So in a sense, you could either say life or God sets it up this way so that we don't necessarily need to understand how it all works, but we, in a sense, you kind of do, though, because if you want to get rid of a conflict or a manifestation of a disease, then you have to kind of go deeper in this way. But ultimately, it's designed so that it frees our body up to be able to have the energy to continue. But that wouldn't make any sense, would it? To continue living a destructive life that will manifest more issues like that?
So we all have a choice, right? Okay. And so we know that we're always given these choices in our life. Am I going to choose this? Am I going to choose this? And there's the thing and the consequence of the thing. So every single thing has a consequence, good, bad, whatever. And then, so what we can say in the Bible, it talks about 4 generations of sins, right? The
Right.
generational sin.
Right.
So then there's this generational sin that happens. Well, each generation carries that. And then it manifests somehow, some way. And so when you deal with the underlying conflict, then it can break that generational pattern so it stops showing up. And so it's about awareness, Justin. I think like that's the bottom line, is that just realizing that whatever's going on is not just what is going on right now.
Something much deeper.
Let's look at the whole picture. Let's build the picture so that we can, and then apply these tools and really honor, oh, this is what my parents, my grandparents, my great-grandparents went through. And so let me do my work. Let me take ownership for the things that have
Yeah.
happened so that my children don't have to complete this unfinished business.
Yeah, that makes sense. So it's more about living with that awareness, because if you just look at how our lives are, we think it's normal how we live. Like if I have some sort of health condition or someone else does, they think, oh, I have that. But they don't realize like your whole family has it, right? It's like a
Yes.
generational. We're in this together. It's not just a single thing that I have and I'm
Yeah.
dealing with it.
That's actually super beautiful. I never actually thought about it like that, but it's really true that
That's the way, right?
it really is. The entire family has it. And maybe if the family came together like Dr. Len did,
Right.
and really took ownership for all the ways that they feel, like, oh, let's say the brokenheartedness or the loss of territory with that, and take, oh, I had where I lost this territory and it made me feel so badly. I'm sorry, please forgive me. I love you.
Right.
Thank you. And then this other, oh, I had this too. And so then we all take the ownership for those things. Then it creates a better healing environment for everyone.
That's probably the way it seems like we're supposed to be living, right? But
think
since
so.
that's so abnormal, we think our modern construct is normal,
right.
and when it's not. And so that's why the work that you're doing seems so abnormal, because it's so
Yeah.
counterintuitive to how we live.
It's true. And
So-
I am definitely the weird one.
Yeah, right? We all
Yeah.
are in our families, But
So true.
yeah, so maybe this is just a big, huge, giant reminder that it's showing us, God, the universe, whatever, it is showing us that we're not living the way we're supposed to be living, and we're not connected to who we're supposed to be connected to, and we're doing all these abnormal things, and maybe this is showing us that.
Right. It's
ultimately,
sort of
right?
like that nudge, like, hey, pay attention.
Right.
And that, the beautiful thing is that, because people think that if you walk down the street, you're going to get a cancer or this is going to happen.
Yeah.
But you will never get sick if you don't have the conflict. And that's a very big point. And so working on the things that really have hurt us in our life, and by that, what I mean is to come to peace with it. So anything that you're not at peace about, anything that there is unforgiveness, that really does manifest. And so little bit at a time, change the perspective, you change everything when you're just doing these little things. And so it's nice to know that we have power. Because so often people think, oh, well, it's out of my control. There's nothing I can do about it. But it's
Right.
not true.
Right.
We all have power, and our power is in this.
Right. Yeah, it's so interesting. All right, we're going to try to do a little break here.
Okay.
We're going to try and see what happens. So
Okay.
if you want to put your headphones on,
All
you
right.
can probably hear, but we'll see if this works there. There we go.
Yeah.
You're listening to Extreme Health Radio, and I hope you're enjoying this show. Please share it with your friends by tagging @Extreme Health Radio on Instagram. Stay tuned for new shows weekly.
I'm just sitting here. I'm so proud. I'm so proud that
Yay.
actually worked. I can't
I love
believe
it when that happens.
All right, we're going to take a little break right now. That was just a little bumper to say, yeah, follow us on Instagram if you guys want more updates on all the shows that we're doing. So we're going to run a little commercial for our biomat here. So check this out.
The history
Okay.
of heat therapy dates back over
our mics are still
2,400
on,
years.
so-
And it was Hippocrates who said, Give me the
here.
power to produce fever, and I will cure all disease. This FDA-approved medical device called the Biomat is a mat that you can lay on, read on, sleep on, do yoga on, sit on, and it can be used on office chairs, massage tables, and the like to help the body heal itself. It's inlaid with 30 pounds of healing crystals using amethyst and a rare black tourmaline, producing negative ions in a healing electrical field. These healing crystals help to restore cellular health by replacing electrons to the atoms, as well as penetrating deep into the body by 4 to 6 inches. What can the Biomat do for you? It'll improve your skin, burns as many calories as if you went jogging for 30 minutes. It improves the immune system by up to 40% or more, reduces stress and fatigue, removes toxins, lowers cholesterol, relieves pain, revitalizes cellular metabolism. It improves cell channels to deliver nutrients and oxygen to every one of your cells. It activates over 3,000 enzymes. And even a Harvard medical study showed cancer cells die at over 42 degrees Celsius. It reduces stress hormones by up to 78%. It allows your body to produce heat shock proteins, which increases endorphins, NK cells, T cells, and lymphocytes. It's very, very low EMF, and it's got a 17-layer technology. Dr. Mark Serkis is the director of the International Medical Veritas Association. Explain to us more about these biomats.
These biomats are these far infrared mattresses. You lay on them, or you sleep on them, or both. You do very heavy treatments during the day, and at night you sleep at just a nice comfortable temperature. These biomats are like these love machines, comfort machines, and healing machines, because what they do is they just radiate out light, far infrared light, and you can radiate yourself all night long while you're sleeping when you're not doing anything else. And what happens is this light penetrates the body and turns to heat. And the first thing that happens when you bring your core body temperature up 1 degree is your immune system strength increases by 40-50%. They feel when you lay down on them, you guys know, you have one. So it's like the feeling is so good. It's like being in the cuddling with a lover, your wife or husband. It's just warmth and comfort.
How are you using biomats for patients in your clinics?
The cancer treatment using heat is very aggressive, meaning during the day, you sandwich yourself in between 2 of them, turn it on to high heat, and bake the cancer. The cancer will die before you will. No, this is, you can
awesome.
go to England and spend $20,000 and microwave a cancer out of existence. These biomats basically do the same thing. Radiation therapy for cancer is really a solid idea. Unfortunately, oncologists use the wrong radiation. They use radiation that kills you. This biomat uses radiation that can save your life and make your life more comfortable, keep you warm in the cold, and help take care of your kids and all, the list doesn't end.
Yeah, because isn't there some sort of temperature at which cancer cells will start dying?
Right, and it's below the temperature that human cells will die.
So you really like this biomat far infrared technology, don't you?
But it's strengthened me. Well, now the kids are addicted to it. They fight on who's going to sleep on it at night. And it not only changed my life, but it changed my medical practice and my books. This is a great machine for anybody who lives in the cold during the winter. Instead of heating a big house, you just heat yourself. Bottom line, it brings good feelings. Just lay on this biomat, and it gives the strength back.
I can attest to that indeed. Kate and I love ours, and we think you will too. Learn more about these amazing biomats at extremehealthradio.com/biomat. Or you could check them out in our store as well. Again, that's extremehealthradio.com/biomat.
We hope you're enjoying this episode. Thanks for being on this health journey with us, and don't forget to check out biochargeme.com for hundreds of health products to build a better you.
All right, just trying to get Audio Chair 3. It's challenging, I should say, to be doing everything here myself, but hope you guys are enjoying the show. We're with Dr. Michelle Lamassa Schrader, and let everyone know about your website too, just so that people can check that out.
Sure. So my personal website is soultreetransformations with an S.com. And then I also have part of recallhealingusa.com, and we have a list of the conferences that I'll be presenting, and also doing workshops around the country, and so it's a way to get in touch with me, both of those places.
Okay, cool. I'm bringing it up on so people can see it right now, recallhealingusa.com. And are you in partnership with Dr. Peter DeWitt on that?
He also is a teacher. He's not doing as much right now. He's taking a little bit of a leave, but yes, we do this together and separately, and so we're trying to touch as many people as we possibly can. So we definitely need more practitioners, because it's not an easy modality, as you can see, because it's the nuances of it, and so it takes time to develop the skills and the understanding, and so we're really looking to broaden that practitioner base.
Yeah, I remember when I was talking with Dr. DeWitt a while back, and I think he had been going through, I mean, you probably know all the nuances, but he was going, is he a medical doctor?
He is. He's a medical doctor and a naturopath.
Yeah, so he was going through some issues with the old Texas Medical Board, wasn't he?
Yeah, for sure.
Is he still going through that?
I think that those have been resolved.
Have they?
And but he has taken a sabbatical, and I think that's it's probably part of it.
I remember Dr. Massey was telling me that he's moving more and more towards less physical and more emotional things, because he was sharing a story with me one time about how there was an IV. I forget what it was, some sort of globular-based digestive supplement, I forget, and it was like $50 for a bottle, and then all of a sudden they classified it under some category, and now it's like $3,000 a bottle or something like that.
Oh my gosh!
And so he said, like, systematically, things are being taken away from us.
Yeah, that's for sure, and that's what I love about recall healing and the emotional work. And when I did my PhD, my focus is in practice. So my PhD is in mind-body medicine with a focus in practice, because I wanted to be able to give people tools to navigate their life, and that at the core is recall healing for me, because when somebody comes in with a breast cancer or something serious, or this is going on, then I have an understanding.
Right.
But then I use the other tools of nutrition and movement and all of these things to support that person, but also really to teach them stress management skills and breathing techniques and understanding their timeline and the letting go exercises. And it's funny, I had a client, and she had a really serious story, and by the time I worked with her, she had half her thyroid removed, and she had half her colon removed, and autoimmune stuff going on, and just really severe kind of stuff.
A lot going on.
Yeah, and so we had our first session, and at the very end of the session, I went through everything, and I told her, about we did her timeline, and I was super excited. I was like, oh, this is good. Yeah, and then like the last 30 seconds, she's like, okay. She's like, okay, everything is great, except for I will never forgive that perpetrator.
Oh my goodness.
And the way she said it, I was like, oh, wow. Okay. Think, Michelle, what are you going to do? And so I said, okay, well, look, you're right. That person doesn't deserve forgiveness. You're absolutely right. And you deserve forgiveness. But let's not focus on the forgiveness piece. Let's focus on peace. Let's help you to come to peace with this situation. And she was severely sexually abused, and her mom allowed it to happen. Her mom gave her to the neighborhood boy for this to happen.
That's
and then when
worse.
It's worse, because then she told her mom, and her mom didn't believe her. So it was 7 years of
Wow.
ritualistic, just terrible things.
Because you have the
So-
thing itself, and then you have the lack of now trust in your mom, and then the
exactly,
hatred
like
for
she's
her.
not protecting me.
It would have been
know?
better had the mom not been involved, or at least for the child to think that, so that there's not this secondary
Right. So
issue
now
going
you
on.
have both of these things. And so, but the most beautiful thing is that she just kept doing, and I work with my clients about once a month, and just give so much to think about, and then just practice these tools. See what works, see what doesn't, see what comes up in your daily life. And so she said, okay. And so we made another appointment, and she came back. And so for about a year, we worked together. And at the end of the year, she tells me, you know what, Michelle? I'm so excited to tell you I have forgiven my perpetrator.
Wow.
And I was so touched because, it was just about, first of all, humbling myself to say,
Yeah.
okay, let's find another way, another avenue. I don't know your story. And obviously there's so much pain that you're experiencing. Let's help you to come to peace with it.
Right.
And so that's really, and it's so beautiful. And so now she goes and she tells everybody, oh, you need to do this.
And now she's weakening herself though, trying to change everybody else.
Exactly.
Right?
So she's like,
that's cool.
it's so fun to see when that happens,
Wow. So I wonder if like the whole point is, I mean, gets into such deeper things about the meaning of life and why we're here and past lives and religion and spirituality and all that stuff. But I wonder if this part of it is like, you have these things that are happening, like for this case that you're talking about with this lady, she's somehow connected to these experiences, right? Whether God allowed it or she came into this life knowing that would happen so that she could work on herself, which seems to make more sense. Or maybe there's a collusion between God and you to work together to do this. So you somehow volunteer for this if you
Right.
believe in more than just the physical. So that makes sense that people would do that, right?
Yeah, and that's actually, interestingly, that is one of the things that helped her to change her perspective. I said,
Really?
because most of the time we wouldn't, like in this, like choose intentionally to be abused and hurt.
Yeah, why would you choose that?
Right. And so when I started reading like the works of Brian Weiss and some of those guys, and because I never believed in any of this stuff, and just the idea of maybe I made a choice to come into the family that I was in, even to marry the men that I did, and that each one really, it's like, oh, wow, if without these experiences, I would not be the individual that I am today. I would not be able to walk with the people that I get to walk with
Right.
if I didn't have these experiences. My mentor says, Michelle, you certainly did make an agreement to never have a dull life.
I love his accent, so great.
So I was like, oh, it's so true, because there's always huge things. Grandson having a brain tumor,
Right.
all these, crazy things that have happened. But to say, let me say thank you to each person that has caused me a significant amount of pain, because you and the way I responded to you allows me to be who I am. That actually helped her so significantly to begin to reframe, because now she has an understanding. She's touching all kinds of people's lives by the work that she's doing, and that would have never happened had she not had these experiences.
So there's an interesting analogy that I've come across, and it's has to do with kind of like this pyramid of health, this book here, but in a separate sense of like, it's called Cartman's drama triangle. Are you familiar with that?
I have seen it, yes.
Oh yeah. Okay. So cool. So basically, I think the way it goes is everyone lives within 3 energy fields, and it's the perpetrator, the victim, and the helper position. And most people think that like the person with the weakest immune system is going to be the perpetrator, but it turns out to be the opposite. The perpetrators are like the guys with the
They're super strong.
strong, right?
Yeah.
They go to jail. I was listening to a guy the other day, a mob kind of a podcast, and his father was in jail and spent 40 years in prison and lived till he's 102. Just got out like a couple weeks ago,
Wow.
eating prison food, and so this guy's like a perpetrator kind of energy field, right? But the weakest position, oddly enough, is not the victim. It's the person that's always trying to help other people, because you're sort of giving away your power. And the idea was to sort of turn that triangle into a 3-dimensional pyramid and raise that up and be the person who's not attached to those 3 because all the time we're going to be in these 3 different energy fields.
Right. And you actually take turns, because maybe at one point you might be a savior, but that victim it's crazy, but it ends up turning around. And sometimes like you're being codependent, really.
Right.
And in that codependency, you ultimately become the persecutor.
Right.
And so that like,
and you don't even know it.
You don't even know it. And so then you get blamed for it. And then the person is like, oh my gosh, it's all my fault. And these kinds, it's boundaries.
It is.
And really, like, that's the thing. Like, it's none of our business. So many things that we make our business are not our business. It's not our business what people think or say about us. It's not our business. Our business is to walk in authenticity. Our business is to see, how am I walking in alignment? Is this true for me? Is this going to bring me joy? Or and am I living? Or am I just slowly dying?
Right.
And so all of those things, and we have to see, like, where are we, and have a check-in. You know, Mother Teresa would at the end of her day, every day, she would envision the people that had come into her day and offer them, you know, like, was I kind? Was I loving? And offer them back kindness and love, and through every single person that she
whether
encountered
she
through
did
that day.
or not, right?
Yeah.
Wow, that's interesting.
So it's a nice little accountability tool, right?
I think it's really important. I should start doing that. I feel like a connection to doing that, because I feel like it would be really important. And I actually used to do this a long time ago. I don't know what happens. You get busy and you just forget.
And kids, too.
And kids, yeah. But, you know, doing that every night and just taking stock of what you did that day and all the people that you ran into either at the grocery store or whatever, and just being nice to them or not nice to them, or there's some sort of reason we interact with everybody.
Exactly. And you never know. It's never by mistake. And it was so funny. The other day I was at Steinmart getting a cute little outfit for our little interview. And so I was at Steinmart, and I came up, but there was 3 different checkers, okay? And then the one person was empty first, but she's like, oh, can you go ahead and wait for this other person?
Okay.
So I said, yeah, sure. So I came up and I meet this person, and then she's like, how you doing? I was like, oh, you know, I'm a lot better. And, you know, shopping therapy is wonderful, you know? And she's like, yeah. And she's like, well, I'm sorry you were having a bad day. And I was like, oh, thanks, you know? And then somehow we started, she's like, you know, she's like, what do you do? And I said, I'm a lifestyle medicine doctor. And she's like, oh my gosh, it's not by mistake that I would meet you today.
Wow.
She said, I'm just doing this for extra money. I'm a nutritional coach. And she said, and what I find is that all these women are so overweight, and I teach them about nutrition and exercise, and they don't eliminate weight. They still stay fat. And I understand that. She said, and I'm just now getting into the emotional work. And I said, oh, it is not by mistake.
Yeah.
And then she said, Anne, I'm going through a really ugly divorce right now, and it's really hard. And I was like, oh my gosh, you know, it's never by mistake.
Never by mistake.
So you think, like, you know, all in that moment, it's divinely orchestrated somehow to have it play out.
Yeah, my gosh. I know when you start realizing that, you know, all of this stuff is interconnected. You know, a lot of people in our academy are saying, you know, like when someone signs up to our academy, I encourage them to share a little bit about them, why they're there and stuff. And a lot of people will say, I'm here because, you know, my husband has this going on and he's either open or not open to it. Or, you know, my dad's got this issue. And so I always encourage them to make sure that you're really careful with how you're expending your energy in those situations, because I fall victim to it all the time. You know, there are times when my mom or someone would want me to email or call someone who was sick at their church or something, and I would do it, and they wouldn't take any of my advice or anything. And it's just, I think it's really important to not be in that energy field of trying to help and being attached to someone else living the way you're living, right? And
yeah, it's so true. And so often, like, the people, you know, what I said earlier about a prophet doesn't speak to his own land, that it's really true. And so unless a person is actually coming to you for help
themselves, right?
You know, you can't, and that's called triangulation. It's like when mom also says, hey, can you go talk to your dad and tell him this and this and this?
Yeah.
So no, mom, you need to go talk to dad and tell him this and this and this.
Yeah.
No, mom, why don't you go minister to that person? Okay. And that it's boundaries. And that so often, you know, I just, I went to a conference last weekend, and I heard William Walter Bond. He used to be a professional basketball player, and now he's a motivational speaker.
Really?
And he
Okay.
just wrote a book called Swim.
Okay.
And it's about sharks, sucker fishes, and parasites.
Okay.
And that sharks, like you guys are sharks in your field, right? You're here and you're leading the way and you're showing people, but like you're learning from Dr. Dr. B. Dr. B.
Oh, Dr. Bergman. Yeah.
Okay, you're learning from Dr. B.
Uh-huh.
And so he's the shark, but you guys are the suckerfish,
Right.
right? And so the suckerfishes in the ocean, they purposely wait for the shark. The shark needs the suckerfish because the suckerfish takes all the parasites off the shark, and so the shark will protect the suckerfish.
Okay.
And will and they go around the world together in the symbiotic relationship. But parasites, they suck you dry.
Mm-hmm.
They don't give back. They steal, they kill, and they destroy.
Mm-hmm.
But with suckerfish and sharks, it's a symbiotic relationship where you're giving to each other. So the mentors the mentees.
Right.
The mentees become suckerfish or become sharks to their mentees, and so it's this beautiful symbiotic relationship that's going forward.
Yeah, that's such a good analogy. Yeah, because a lot of people will just suck you dry and they don't have any intention of changing. They just want to air their sort of drama and get people involved in their world and their suffering, and
Exactly.
they somehow gain some kind of power from that, right?
Right. And so I have come to the place where I say, you have a choice. You always have a choice. The choice is we may not be able to really shift our circumstances completely in that moment. Maybe we start to do certain things, but the thing that we have a choice about is how we receive it, how we perceive it, and our attitude about it. And so when we take a step back and not make it personal, when we do our work, when we look at our triggers, when we use the symptoms in our body to allow us to have a deeper understanding, then we can go forward and sort of keep going.
Yeah, it's that ownership I think is really important. A lot of times, like I see this a lot where people are, especially here in California now, there's all these bills being passed with vaccinations and, and there's a lot of people out there that are just so upset. And I get it. I mean, I completely understand. There's a lot going on, especially in the last, couple years.
For sure.
And they're saying that the president this and senator that and, all this giving your power away. And I think, yes, there is a place for, sort of, I guess, for lack of a better term, fighting against that kind of stuff. There's a place for being strong in your positions and trying to fight for a better world. There's a place for that. But at the end of the day, all this stuff is just noise going on out there. And it's more important, I think, to focus on what we have inside, because it's like the ego wants to help the kids in Africa, right? But you still have like a dirty bedroom and you still have a dirty house, right? You gotta
and we
fix
still
that.
have all these kids in our own backyard that are starving. So,
Right?
So it really is clean your own junk in your trunk, really,
Right.
before you start doing anything. And
Yeah.
so that so many times it's beautiful that you said that, because so many times moms want me to work with their kids and moms want me to work with their husbands, and I just say, do the work yourself. You have to begin with you and clean, your own stuff up. Where aren't you at peace? What have you experienced? Process that. Give yourself love. Honor your little girl, your little boy for what you did experience, because we get stuck when we're traumatized.
Right.
So we're stuck at that age. So many people are walking around as 5-year-olds in an adult body because that's where they got traumatized. And so then they kick and scream and they have all these temper tantrums. But
Right.
the truth is our job is to grow our own little girl and little boy self up, give ourselves honor for what we did experience so that we can. And then once that starts happening, then people will treat you the way you want to be treated.
And you'll attract those people.
Exactly. And then it's like energetically, the way I envision it is that when we're growing up, we have this sort of symbiotic relationship with our family. But then when we go away and we learn that some of the things weren't so healthy,
Yeah.
and then you start to get really healthy with certain things, you might not resonate at all with them anymore.
Right.
Okay, and so
That's
it
a lot of
becomes
people listening.
So for sure.
Yeah.
And it becomes like polarities. So the people that aren't healthy, don't resonate, they might go by the wayside. Okay. But then it makes room for more beautiful things and people to show up in your life.
Right.
And, I really, there's something like there was so many people that didn't treat me with respect or love or, and just were just mean because I was mean to myself.
Right.
Because I was disrespectful to myself. But when I started saying, no, I'm sorry, that's not going to work for me.
Yeah.
No, I can't do that. No, I won't do that.
Or they say, well, why can't you do that?
So
And
because
you
I'm
wanna
choosing
just say,
not to.
I'm just
because
choosing
it's-
it.
Right.
'Cause
And
I
you can
want
say,
that.
you know what? It's not a good time for me. It's not healthy for me. I'm just respecting my body right now. And so I just really can't. It's sort of like when I finished my PhD and then the family parties were coming up and I'm like, oh man, before I had the excuse like, oh, I have a paper, I can't go.
Yeah.
And now I'm like, oh no, I don't want to go, but I don't have an excuse.
Right.
So I actually just had to learn to be more in integrity and say, you know what, I'm sorry, I can't go today. And you don't owe anybody an excuse.
That's the thing is
right?
people will
You
say,
don't
well,
have
why?
to do an explanation
Yeah.
and just say, oh, it's just not going to work out for me today. I'm sorry.
Yeah.
So then you're staying true to yourself. You're not lying
Mm-hmm.
and you're just like really living in alignment. And that's where the problem comes because when we're pushed and we do something against what we believe is true for us, that's when all the problems start to come out in our body.
Yeah, I would imagine that doing little things like that, people that are watching or listening, I mean, we all do that every day. We do, let's say we do 10 things in a day, maybe 7 or 8 of them are things we don't want to do or things that we committed to that we no longer want, or, someone's going to throw a tantrum if you don't. And so, like you said, I think is really cool is how people want a really good explanation, but sometimes it's just because I don't want to.
Exactly.
I just don't want to, and I'm sorry that, that's the way it is, but I'd love to do it some other time.
Right. My best girlfriend was like, she's so great. Like she really taught me about boundaries and
Wow.
she's so great at boundaries. And she's like, I'm not doing that. And, she would go to a family party and
so
she's
great.
like, oh, I don't want to clean the dishes. So I'm not. And so she would sit and not to clean the dishes. Well, I was raised like, you better clean the dishes. You
Right.
better be like Martha and, and
gotta
get in
do all that
there
stuff.
and do what you need to do.
Yeah.
Oh no. And so I started learning from her. So I tell people, borrow behaviors from people that you respect. And begin and I would hear my mentor in my head, like I have several mentors in my head, and I would hear them say, or Gilbert would say, Michelle, look at this, or over here. And so I started integrating the way that they might behave in a certain situation in order for me to draw boundaries, to say no, to do certain things that I normally wouldn't have done. And that then it becomes, if you do it enough, it becomes part of who you are.
Yeah, and then you serve as a mentor for other people because
Yes.
that's refreshing, and all of us like that. All of us like to be around people that do that.
Yeah.
But we don't do it ourselves, and then we get mad at ourselves for that, and that's another conflict and
Oh
emotion.
my gosh, we're so hard on ourselves. We're like the worst. We're like, you're the worst person in the whole world. Like
And your body
we
hears
all-
that,
it's like-
right?
Exactly. So all those messages that you keep saying, and I used to look in the mirror and say, oh, you're a fat pig, because I was 100 pounds bigger. You're so disgusting. There's nothing good about you. I no longer say that to myself ever. And there's some times where I'm pretty hard on myself, but I have really good friends that are like, Michelle, and shake the box a little, and then that's where we can say, is that true? Is that absolutely true?
Yeah.
What happens when you believe that thought? And
Yeah.
where would you be without that thought? That comes from Byron Katie's work.
Yeah.
And that you reframe that moment. Is it true that you're the most horrible person in the world, or you're the most terrible father or mother
And
or
if
whatever?
you can't prove it, then it's not true.
It's not true.
Yeah.
And so there might be an aspect of, oh, this is my growing edge, because I hear moms or that they yell and scream at their kids, and well, we all lose it from time to time, and it's never it's never too late to go back and say, you know what, honey, I'm so sorry. I totally blew it. I lost it in that moment. I really love you. I honor you. I respect you. And then you build them up. And then they see your humility.
Yeah.
There's nothing better than for your children to see your humility, because it teaches them that it's okay to be wrong. It's okay to make mistakes.
Do you think, I was listening to a podcast recently with Isadora, do you know her last name? Laker, yeah. And she's from German New Medicine, I think. I think
she's German New Medicine. She actually was my mentor for German New Medicine. I learned from her and took all the courses.
And she was saying that with all physical issues, diseases or whatever, there's always some sort of shock or trauma that's involved. Do you think that's the case? Do you think that with every sort of health condition, there's always a shock or trauma? Or can those things happen and not have that?
There's always shock or trauma, but it's either a big shock or trauma. Okay, so like with Dr. Hammer, his son was shot and spent 3 months dying of his wounds in the hospital. And literally dies in Hammer's arms. That's a big shock.
That's a big shock.
Right? Okay, or it's an ongoing same kind of conflict, day in and day out, feeling so stuck, so it's the same for the brain. Too much is like not enough, and so for the brain, so it can sometimes when we have that big shock, that's what elicits the response of disease, but it's equivalent to all the other things. It's not one time. It's all the other times that you felt this way. And that's why we look at the timeline. That's why we begin to unpack the bag, because we want to see what else. And we keep asking, what else? What else? How else did I feel this way? How else?
Right.
So if a person has a breast cancer, where did you feel separated in your life? And, what was going on? And then where else did you feel separated? And what was the relationship like? And so then you begin to see, and then you ask, hey, what was your relationship like with your grandma, and what was your mom's relationship like? And so then you get this whole bigger picture. The thing about German New Medicine, I love German New Medicine. It is our foundation. However, it's only focusing on the here and now. Okay, the last 6 months.
Oh, really?
Yeah, but it's not just the last 6 months.
What would they say to that? It is only the last 6 months?
It's the like 6 months to a year is what they look at.
Okay, that's it.
That's really, they don't look at the lifetime patterns. And like in Recall Healing and Total Biology, we look at the whole timeline. We look at the project purpose. We look at the pregnancy. We look
6
at
months
the
before
answer.
The pregnancy.
The 9 months before pregnancy or conception, the conception itself, the pregnancy, the whole first year of life. This is what becomes
it's all
there.
It's all part of it, right?
And then the ancestors. Who do you line up with? And then miscarriages and abortions, they matter.
Yeah.
Because there's all of this. And being in Russia and Ukraine teaching, it's crazy how many women have had like 20 abortions.
Really?
And their ancestors 20, 30 abortions, because that's the way that they lived. But you can't, in nature, animals don't typically kill their babies unless there's something wrong with them.
Yeah.
And so there's the biology. So when we don't respect biology doesn't respect us. And so we have to pay attention to all of these little nuances. And so that can be one thing, because I had a woman who had an abortion when she was 18 years old. And then 3 cycles later, when she's 54, she ends up having a peritoneal cancer, which is an attack against the abdomen. Okay? That happened, many, many years before. But she was so in her head, and it was such a trauma, and her mom forced her to have an abortion.
Oh, her mom forced that.
And so that's even more of an attack.
So in a situation like that, just getting into like real details, what would a woman like that, if she were, I guess if she's 18, she's not really forced, unless there's sort of coercion where you can't come back home and you're not on your feet yet.
Right, her mom dragged her. Her mom literally put her in the car and said, you're going to have an abortion.
So let's say in that case, because most people that get divorced or get an abortion it's not forced,
Right.
But let's say in that case, what could somebody do in that case? Let's say maybe they have had an abortion and they're listening to this thinking, oh my gosh, I need to do something.
Right.
Outside of working with someone, which I'd highly recommend them work with you. But if they don't, what could they do to honor that and to sort of absolve anything that might happen as a result, like your client?
So typically the first thing that I ask the person is what is their spiritual belief and their system. And so because we want to honor that as well, but also to let them know, like if we're pregnant, that's a human being, and they did some recent research, which is so fascinating to me, that what they did, I don't know how they did it, but they found like with the ovum and the semen, and when the sperm went into the ovum, an explosion of light happened.
Really?
And it was like all this explosion started happening, and it was life being created. And so people
Wonder
thinking
if that's where the soul comes in.
that's what I would say, right? Because it's
Yeah.
like there's this explosion of life that is
Wow.
there. So it does matter. And so I had a woman, so I'll give you the example. I had a woman that had parasites in her breast, okay? She and her husband had been dating in college, got pregnant,
Okay.
and then they decided that it was best to have an abortion. Okay. And so they did. But, 35 years later, I think it was almost 40 years later,
Oh, really?
she was still suffering over it. Okay. Their second child becomes a pastor. She ministers to women with abortions, Okay. The
So
solution.
this is all, like, did this happen just quote by chance? Like she just became a pastor that she was interested in?
No, because mom was still suffering, dad was still suffering. They were super Christians.
But she didn't consciously, the daughter, make that decision because of that, right?
She
just
had
went into
no
that.
idea.
Yeah, that's what I figure.
Yeah, so
Yeah.
that's the thing. Like we think we choose,
Yeah.
but really we're sort of driven by this unconscious beliefs and issues that our parents have had.
Right.
Okay, so she becomes a pastor.
Interesting.
And then there was a boy that was, they had a son, and he became an architect. And an architect is the structure, and the structure is the father. And so we look at all these symbolisms, right? And then they had a business, and all of the people in the business were sucking them dry, and they were allowing them to do it. That's why parasites in their nest, in their business. The business is a nest.
And the livelihood of their...
And the livelihood.
Yeah.
And so they came to a workshop, and like 5 minutes before they were supposed to leave, like literally it was like an hour before they were supposed to leave, they took me aside and they said, hey,
gosh.
we had this abortion before we were even married, and we did some of this work, but and so some of the things that you can do: name the baby. Okay, give that baby honor. Most women know that what the gender of the baby is. So whatever comes to mind, even if it's not totally true, we don't care. Give that baby honor. Okay, so sometimes people never have another baby, so see that baby like in heaven or with light or with the energy where they're connected with that, and they're sort of looking out over you, that they have become your little guide that is with you and protecting you from maybe bigger things that have happened. So to do that, she had done some of that work, but I said, so how old would your daughter be? Because she knew it was a girl. And so she said, she would be 42 years old. And I said, well, and you're Christian? Yes. Well, you believe in Jesus? Yes. You believe in forgiveness? Yes. Well, do you think that Jesus died on the cross for that? Yes. Well, then why do you keep taking it off the cross? Why do you keep bringing it back?
Right.
Okay? Because you can't forgive yourself. That is the first step, is that you have to forgive yourself. So she never saw it. And I said, don't you think that your daughter knows how very sorry that you are? See her sitting right next to Jesus. She's in heaven with Jesus, looking out for you. And that change in her perspective changed her life. Parasites went away. She's totally healthy, doing great.
Wow.
And then we went in and we did her family tree. And this is the craziest story, okay? She's a number 3 for her mom and dad, okay?
What does that mean?
She's a number 3 birth order.
Okay.
Okay, so she was the 3rd daughter that was born to mom and dad.
Okay.
Well, the father was a number 1 in his family, and his number 3 sister got pregnant outside of marriage. And it was a big secret, Okay. And they had the sister go to a home and give the baby up for adoption and do all of that, but nobody talked about it. It was a big secret.
Wow.
So then this guy, and they're very Christian. And so it's a big, you don't get pregnant outside of marriage and all of this. So then it's still in his mind. And so it's not resolved.
Right, still floating out
it's
there.
It's
or
still floating,
whatever.
right?
Yeah.
And so the anger, the hurt, all of the shame and things. So then what? His daughter lives out this unfinished business from above.
So then there's not just a connection, direct connection, like from a linear perspective, but there's a connection with aunts and uncles and other things.
And birth order number.
And
it's based on birth order number. So
Okay.
that aunt was a number 3. She's a number 3. And then her son is a number 3. Okay. And he had a child that is autistic. Well, one of the conflicts about autism is who is the one that's living in exile? And he lined up, number 1, with that number 1 child from the great aunt who was given up for adoption.
Wow. That's just crazy. That is so crazy.
I know. It's like you can't make it up, right? It's
Yeah.
just, and so that's it's really ambiguous. You don't see it very clearly, but when you start to build the picture for yourself, then more opens up, more information comes to you in the ways that you never expected it, and your life becomes better.
So this is what's really good about working with someone like you or a practitioner, is that you're able to sort of do this work and figure out all of this stuff, and then it brings a new perspective, right? And it brings a way of understanding and forgiving. And
yes, exactly. And the cool thing is that I don't do the work, because sometimes people will be like, oh, you're going to heal me. No, I'm not going to heal you.
Yeah.
You are going to do the work, which can create healing in your body.
Yeah.
And that you're already healing. Even if you just change this perspective, that's healing.
So all of this is designed to really bring us to an awareness that this is all connected, right?
Yes.
Is that the whole ultimate purpose?
Really,
it seems?
it's and we do want health and wellness in our body, and we want to live to our maximum potential.
Yeah.
And I think by getting rid of some of this yuck that the family has carried, it really removes this. I like to say that it's sort of like when we know nothing, we're in the middle of the wilderness, it's dark, okay? And then you're running into spider webs and it feels so nasty. It's because that's all the unfinished business of the family. But as you start learning these tools and you start doing Ho'oponoponos, the boulders start to come on the side. You start to see the moonlight shining on the spider web, so you don't walk directly into it.
Yes.
Or if you see it, like, you might just get a little bit versus this whole thing. But then you begin to understand there's something much greater than just you. It's always about us, our parents, our grandparents, and our great grandparents.
And our level of connection, right, within all of that, and loving them and honoring them.
Well, just genetically, it manifests just like we could be completely disconnected. Like, for instance, kids given up for adoption.
Right.
They're still living out the unfinished business of their biological parents,
Right.
not their adoptive parents.
Wow.
Okay, and so the adoptive parents have provided a sweet place and the potential for greater healing, but those children are still manifesting the unfinished business of their natural family.
Even though they don't know that.
Yeah, no, and I would say especially because they don't know it. Because what is not in our awareness, a lot of times returns as a destiny.
So that's the reason why things are happening, why we're experiencing certain things, why things come up.
Right, and the more that you put it into the awareness, you're lowering the waterline of the iceberg. So now you have more conscious awareness. You have more ability to make choices for yourself that are much better for you, because now you're not in link with all these unhealthy ties and that have bound you.
Golly. Who would have thought it would be so much to health? I like what you said before. Sometimes, we're doing all these shows and, sometimes you only grab one or two things, It's like reading a book,
Yeah, for sure.
You remember one or two quotes or something. But what you said was interesting at the beginning. It was like, what did you say? It was, if it doesn't matter sort of the supplements and all the treatments you're doing, you just won't get sick if you don't have the conflict.
Right.
Right.
So think about it like when you're at work, okay, and everybody in the environment gets sick, but a couple people,
Right.
they didn't have the conflict.
Yeah.
Okay, and so that's
So the conflict
thing,
in that
the
situation will
conflict
be
leads the
different.
way.
Well, it would be different for every person.
Well,
that
it
sort
would
of-
be their personal story of the conflict is different, but like let's say it's a flu that comes out, right?
Yeah, all these families
So,
get it. The
right?
kid gets it, and then the whole family.
Then
gets
the whole family gets it except
Yeah.
for one person.
Yeah.
Well, that one person didn't have the conflict of misunderstanding, or they didn't have the territorial conflict. So bronchitis, like, get out of my territory. There's that,
Right.
So everybody gets sick, but not this one kid, because they're cool, they're just chill, they're just playing, and it's all good, and they don't have the conflict.
Wow. Yeah, it's so interesting, isn't it? Like you see stuff, and I bet it's got to be kind of hard for you because you see people in your life, and you feel like you can help them, or you think, oh
Totally.
wow, there's so much I could bring to the table and let them be aware. But if they don't ask for your help, you just kind of sit back on the
Yeah,
sidelines.
This is
And
totally true. And there's been a couple of times where I'll like reach out on Facebook and just message them, hey, I can offer you some insight if you'd like it. And,
Yeah.
sometimes they say yes, but most of the time I never hear again from them. And now I'm not friends with them anymore.
yeah, I know, right?
It's so crazy.
Ay. So if people want to work with you, how do they do that? Through Recall Healing USA?
Through Recall Healing USA or the personal website of Soul Tree Transformations.
Okay.
And they can just send me, send me an email, and we'll get you scheduled. And also, I do workshops, and I would say if you have the ability to come to a workshop, it'd be great, because it's like five sessions all at once, and then the synergy of the workshop is great. So I'm giving a 1-day workshop in South Carolina at the end of October. I'm going to be also at the ALS conference in October in Utah, and
wow.
then I'm giving a 3-day workshop in November in Texas, and then a toolbox workshop in Florida. So I'm all over. They have the ability that way, or they can also give me a call. So
Wow.
I can give you my number too. And you
Yeah.
can
So
post that.
what's the number that people could call?
So my number is 626-494-3333.
626-494-3333.
Yeah, and
I
I'm
like
not
the
lying.
triple, quadruple
Yeah,
threes.
Me
That
too.
was,
I was like, that's so great.
Wow.
So
that's
yeah.
really cool. And so you can work with people on Skype as well.
I work
and,
with people Skype, phone, all over the world, and so it's not proximity, it's just the energy.
Wow, that's so cool. That's so cool. Awesome. Anywhere else that you want to send people to, or you're on Instagram too, right? If
I'm
they
on
wanna-
Instagram, I'm on Facebook, and so that, I would say go to YouTube. There's a bunch of videos, like you mentioned, Dr. Massey,
Uh-huh.
Dr. Renaud, Dr. DeWitt, myself. It's starting to get out there a little bit more,
Yeah.
which is very cool. And
Yeah.
and so those are all avenues to be able to learn more about it, and to get some more insight.
Yeah, get some spiritual growth going on, right?
Yeah, for sure.
It's always good. All right, we're going to end the show. If you guys like this episode, if you like what we're talking about, please share it with your friends, because we would appreciate that, getting this work out there a little bit further. So we appreciate all of your support over the years, going to our store. We just launched a brand new store, so we appreciate that. And if you like the show, tag us on Instagram. And we much love to you all, and we'll see you on the next episode.
No material on this blog
Thank
is
you.
intended to
Thank
suggest that you
you.
should
Oh,
avoid
yeah.
medical
So
care.
awesome.
Always work
And
with qualified medical professionals,
for
even if
sure.
you educate yourself in the field of live food, nutrition, and alternative medicine. I'm not a doctor,
Oh my
nor am I
gosh,
offering
that
readers
was
medical
cool.
advice.
We
None
don't
of the
know
information
what's
offered here
gonna
should be interpreted as a
unfold, but
diagnosis
it's
of any
always
disease,
super
nor an attempt to treat or
powerful.
prevent any disease or
So
condition.
the
While
good
information in this blog is
stories
discussed in the context of numerous
and,
conditions, it can be
you know,
dangerous to
it's
take
just
action
like
based on any information in this blog,
the
or to start
prayer,
any
like
health program without first
I
consulting
do
a health
pray,
professional.
like,
The content found here is for informational purposes only and is in no way intended as medical advice, as a substitute for medical counseling, or as a treatment/cure for any disease or health condition, and nor should it be continued as such. Always work with a qualified healthcare professional before making any changes to your diet, prescription drug use, lifestyle, or exercise activities. This information is provided as is, and the reader/viewer assumes all risks from the use, non-use, or misuse of this information.